I think that you always have an idea of what you're going to expect, and then you do that thing or you go to that place and it blows all of your expectations away. And I think that that's really what I'm hoping for, because you can read something in a book, you can watch a movie, you can watch a TV show, but it's not going to be the same as visiting these places and really walking in the shoes of other people. And it's a perspective that you aren't going to get just sitting in your seat. You know, sometimes it takes a 7-hour flight to really gain that new knowledge and new perspectives.
So studying philosophy of law specifically attracted me to this trip since we study a lot about criminal justice ethics, and realizing how messed up the criminal justice system is far beyond just my generic knowledge of it is what attracted me to see the difference between the United States and Scandinavian prisons.
I think it's important to study other nations' justice system because we can see what's wrong with ours. We can see what they're doing right that we're doing wrong. We can see what they're doing wrong that we're doing right. And when you're able to compare and contrast, I think you can come to a very viable solution that can benefit more people and promote the general welfare of as many as possible.
What I study as a pre-law student attracted me to this trip because I felt like I would be seeing the other side of the justice system a lot. I'd be seeing the courtroom, and it's important to see how the decisions that are made in that courtroom affect people once they become incarcerated or once they're on the other side of the system.
I think it's important to travel to other countries and study their justice system, because the only way we can learn is to look at how others do it. Like, we can't just expect to know how to do everything. Like, we have to be willing to listen and hear how other people do things in order to benefit us as a country.
I think there's a tendency for Americans to think that we're the best at everything, and that's not the case, so it's really important to learn from other countries and learn about what's successful and what isn't.
I think this experience is completely unique to Drexel. I've never heard of anything like it, and no one I've spoken to has either.
I do feel this opportunity is unique to Drexel, especially because I'm a first-year student, and other programs were not, at other universities would not have even been offered to me because they're just worried about me getting through the semester. So I think this is very unique to Drexel, and I really appreciate it.
Great, you're done, right on schedule.
Thanks.
When I first got to Norway, I was very, very tired and cold. One of the first things we did, we spent the whole day walking around. So it was just a very immersive experience for the first day of being there, which I did not expect, but it was in a good way.
When I first got there, I felt like the environment was different. Now that I'm back, I realized that I went through a complete culture shock. I couldn't believe that the environment was the way that it was and the people were as friendly as they were.
There were definitely no breaks on the trip. You know, it was a constant movement of whether we were going to museums, learning more about the culture, or doing something that was very educational, like a site visit. And so right away, we were going to Halden Prison, which was something that we knew was going to be the most monumental thing of this trip. So it was definitely something that we were all looking forward to.
When the bus first rolled up, I was kind of confused by the large wall. And it just shocked me because I knew that the system would be completely different here. And I didn't imagine that level of security. However, I probably should have, because it is a maximum security prison.
I kind of just assumed it was a regular prison from the appearance outside, and it kind of lowered my expectations of what I was expecting. So I was like, oh, look at this, like a 10-foot wall. Okay, yeah, that's very prison-like.
And once we entered the facility, it surprised me to see that it was light in there and it wasn't so dark and gloomy.
The very first thing that I noticed, like the lobby area, doesn't feel like a prison. I'm not going through several different security monitors or metal detectors. I'm walking through a regular lobby. There's a cleaning lady cleaning up the stairs. There's people walking around. I didn't know they were prisoners.
When we got to Halden, the first thing that we saw was a presentation given by the warden, and this was definitely the best way to start because it created a lot of foundation for what we were going to see later on the tour. And it was really great to hear how proud he was of the achievements that Halden has made as a prison as a whole. He spoke a lot about the history of prison reform, and you know, because in America we think that there's really no coming back from the mass incarceration issue that we're facing right now. So being able to listen to a warden talk about how his country and his city went from a place of such mundaneness and such lack of humanity to now being known as one of the most reformed prisons and one of the most humanitarian prisons, I think is definitely a point of hope for us.
I don't get the sense that it was like built to be like an actual prison with those like cement walls and not so good lighting and like a little damp. It wasn't like that here.
I think immediately the architecture of the space, which allows people to exist in a much more organic way, just allowing nature to be just outside, to let people walk by trees. It seems so simple, but yet it has a really profound impact. I really didn't have any expectations, but I can't help but feel the respect for humanity.
I think there are just way more resources here. They can go into trades, they can learn skills that they can apply when they're released.
Yeah, they're all smiling, they're all very happy. They were all quite literally engaged in some kind of work. Either it was making dinner or making an art project or really studying, and I think that's such a huge difference.
When we were on the tour in Halden, one of the things that we were able to visit was the recording studio. It was this giant room filled with tons of microphones, tons of instruments, and just an immense amount of technology. And it was amazing to see the amount of money and resources that they were putting into something that, you know, arguably is not definitely a human need, but it is something that adds a lot to these men's lives, and I think it gives them a really great outlet and something to be proud of.
The job that stuck out to me most it was when the inmates were cooking in the kitchen, and I thought that was amazing that they're given that amount of trust to actually handle knives and prepare food for other inmates as well as the warden. And the food was amazing. I actually told one inmate that I did not eat pork, and he actually went and got a completely different meal for me, and I was like, no, it's okay. He's like, no, we'll fix it for you.
I think it's important to note that if we built Halden Prison in Philadelphia, it would not succeed. We have a totally different environment outside of the prison system, but there are certainly elements here that we could implement. Baby steps, maybe we'll get there one day.
Even though Norway was super jam-packed, I was really excited to go to Stockholm, Sweden to get the new perspective on juvenile justice and to also finally have downtime on the ride over there.
My first impression of Stockholm was that it's definitely bigger than Oslo and had just a bigger city feeling than Oslo. It was very bustling, very active, very lively.
After our time at Halden, it was super exciting to transition to Sweden because in Sweden we were able to see how the criminal justice system deals with juveniles and how society views the well-being of one as the well-being of the entire society and the downfall of a person as the downfall of society.
So right now we're in Sweden. We are at the National Board of Institution and Care, and we just spoke to Ola, who's a member of the communications there and is also a professor.
He was educating us all about the juvenile justice system and how they treat the boys and girls that go through this system.
One of the things that I thought was really important and that I've seen as like a pattern in a lot of the other places we visited is how much money they're willing to spend on each I don't want to say inmate, but prisoner or person that is in their systems, how much money they're willing to spend. I don't think America could do that, especially with how big our populations are, and I find that really important too because it shows how important rehabilitation is for them, that they're willing to spend X amount of money on whoever it is just so they can have a betterment for themselves and the society.
In the US, we are very hesitant, I feel like, to give people second chances, especially kids that are between the ages of 12 and 20. We view what they are now as what they will always be, and that's a very negative mindset. But here, Ula was telling us, you know, second chances are everything. And if you are between the ages of 0 to 20, they really emphasize the idea of second chances. And it's a pretty universal idea that kids deserve second chances, and that if we are not willing to give them a second chance, then what does that say about how they grow up and how we are responsible for them in the future?
It's not just a one-size-fits-all, it's very towards like, how can we help the betterment of this person in their way?
Learning from Ula, you kind of learn from the other perspective about how they run these prisons and the reasoning behind it, which I think was an important context to have, and it gave me better understanding and kind of preparation when we went to Barbie.
Barbie is a juvenile detention facility that also aids in drug rehabilitation and corrections. So boys from the ages up to 18 are able to go there as part of their sentence if they do commit a crime, but also if they have a drug addiction, they're able to seek help there.
The first thing we did is we got a presentation from the warden. The juveniles don't like when outsiders come to have these presentations because they kind of feel like we're like examining them, and they kind of feel like almost an experiment. And he wants to kind of get away from that and like not speak for these juveniles. So the fact that he had two of these juveniles, these boys, come in and talk from their perspective instead of just him, I think was really important because we gained a lot of understanding from the two juveniles, and I think it gave a lot more insight to, rather than just saying like statistics and facts about this institution and how the structure behind how it works.
So after visiting Norway and getting to see the adult prison side of it, to now going to Stockholm, Sweden, and getting to see the juvenile justice side of it, our last stop was Denmark, where it was really great to gain information from the police and from individuals working at the safe injection sites.
So going to the police headquarters in Denmark was a really eye-opening and crucial experience to this trip. We've been doing a lot of talking to the inmates, and it was just nice to get a perspective from the police department themselves.
It was kind of different than Halden and Barbie. It wasn't really about like walking around and seeing something as more as listening to the people who work at the police and how they are able to connect with the community and lead that to crime prevention.
So ironically, a few days ago, Pennsylvania was finally approved to have a safe injection site be installed in an area near Kensington. And while that is a really huge opportunity for Philadelphia, it is really a privilege to be able to look back at Denmark, look at my experiences while at the safe injection site and compare them and use them as a way to analyze how the safe injection site in Philadelphia might be impacting us and our communities.
I mean, this trip has been super impactful as a whole. I think it's given me a better sense of optimism as far as what things could be.
This might seem kind of simple, but I truly learned the difference between rehabilitation and punishment on this trip, and just understanding the difference in what it looks like was really important to me.
So one of the reasons why this class is different than other classes is that you guys get the opportunity to travel and to see firsthand some of the places that we've read about. So what is one word that you guys would use to describe this experience?
Impactful.
Hopeful. Development.
Compassion.
Connection.
Immersive.
Comparative.
Changed.